care about this community. I actually want to start off with an important visit that President Biden made in early 2022 that I think will speak to both the intentionality and substance of our policies when it comes to driving more equity and economic opportunity for Black business community. He visited Greenwood District. Let me just, a show of hands, how many of you are familiar with Greenwood District in Tulsa, Oklahoma? I would think this community is no stranger to Greenwood, the birthplace of the Black Wall Street. But also in the year 2022, that's the 100-year anniversary of the burning down of the Black Wall Street. So early in his term, the president made a trip, and against that very solemn backdrop, he made a commitment that 15%, and here's a substance, 15% of the entire United States government's federal contracting, which, by the way, we spend $700 billion a year on buying goods and services of all sorts. $700 billion. That's bigger than the GDP of many countries. And he made a commitment and said 15% of this needs to go towards Black entrepreneurs, brown entrepreneurs, veteran women. And this year, our goal is to get to 13. We did hit 12% last year. And if all goes well, in 2025, our goal will be to get to 15%. You can do the math. These are real numbers. And I want to start with that is that often you talk about equity, we hear about vision, but in this administration, the president and our vice president, who I have the pleasure to work with and serve with and I know their heart, have made sure that our policies are actually delivering with the actual funneling of opportunity and funds into this community. Of course, our work is not done. And I'll give you a couple of examples of how, or means of how we are making sure contracts are get into the Black business community. One is the 8A program. Anyone here familiar with the 8A program? And I saw the mayor's hand. 8A is one of the procurement vehicles we use at the federal government for fast-tracking federal contracts for communities that are historically disadvantaged. By the way, the 8A program, just like other race-conscious programs, have faced judicial challenge in this administration. And we have worked very hard to make sure we maintain that program. If anything, we grow that program. So 8A is one program. If you're interested, definitely talk to our team and see how you can become a federal government contractor. The second policy that I personally have advanced is what we call the rule of two. That if there are two small businesses that are qualified to provide a good and service, they should be given preference for getting federal government agencies contract. Both together is why we last year had a historic figure of 28% of all federal government contracts went to small businesses. And SBA has that mandate. It's part of my job to make sure that happens. And of course, when it comes to our work in supporting the Black business community for contracts, that goes on. Let me step back a little bit. When you look at the last 4 years, you look at the investments that we've made in building our economy. These investments in their scale, in their breadth, in their ambition are genuinely historic. Between the bipartisan infrastructure law, bipartisan CHIPS and Science Act, Inflation Reduction Act, which was the biggest climate action legislation and investment that actually any country has made in history so far. These are investments that are building our country, our economies, including the state of Alabama. Here in the state, $12.5 billion worth of new private sector investment is coming in. In fact, my team was reminding me that Alabama is one of the top 10 states to receive federal public infrastructure monies. Yes, and of course, now the work, and when we reconvene next year, our work is to make sure that that opportunity is getting into these communities, because that doesn't happen automatically. And we know that. And that's why I started talking about the federal government contracts, because that's an intentional example of how we've made this happen. Another thing that we notice is that whenever you have a huge public investment of this nature happens, there's one more stimulus that gets created, and that is the entrepreneurial stimulus. Because you see small businesses now have additional customers to serve, or you have a new class of startups that emerge to serve these new industries, and that's precisely what's going on. In the state of Alabama as a whole, 258,000 founders have started a business. That's a record in the last 3.5, 4 years. And now that's where SBA comes in. As someone who's been an entrepreneur, starting a business is a first step. But getting funding and then building a product like Carl did with his first hat and having the product market fit, that's where the real work is, and that's how you create a viable business. And that's where SBA comes in. So you heard from our colleague Tom earlier, but I'm going to give you just 3 examples or 3 specific policies that we've been championing at SBA to make sure folks, especially in the Black business community, have access to funding. Number 1, we are striving to democratize access to funding by making sure that SBA is backing lenders that actually do banking, that actually bank with these communities. And these are some of the lessons we learned during the pandemic. You may recall that the first time the PPP loans came out under the previous administration, JP Morgan was the first bank to get that out. Now, many folks obviously bank with JP Morgans, but we also know many in these communities do not bank with JP Morgan. So what we have done in the second goal of our effort in this administration is to expand the network of local banks, regional banks, community banks. There are 2 CDFIs, mission-driven lenders, in the state of Alabama that you're working with that are new. There are 3 micro lenders that are now available to work with you and to fund you as entrepreneurs here in the state, including in this region. Second, making sure that the SBA loans they're obviously larger loans, but they're also available in size that you could use. So I'll give you one stat that you may find surprising. I found it surprising when I joined the government. An average SBA loan is more than $500,000. Well, that's great for many small businesses, but there are others who are just starting out. They might need a $10,000 loan, a $20K loan. And the banks won't talk to you because they say, well, I can't spend giving a $20K loan the same amount of time because I could do a larger loan that's more profitable. So we made the process of lending simpler for smaller loans. It's now down to 2 to 3 pages. And we've seen that in the first year of rolling out those changes, our small dollar lending is up 47% year over year. Yes, you can applaud that because we certainly hope this will make a difference. And my third example, and this is my favorite example, is on the entire spectrum of equity. We had a situation that if you had a criminal record or you had some situation years ago and you took care of it, folks were not eligible to even apply for a loan. Forget about getting through the process. You couldn't even apply for a loan. 1 out of 3 Americans has a criminal record. 1 out of 3. And actually, the vice president made this announcement. I joined her in Detroit when she rolled this out. That if those who are just as impacted as individuals, if you've taken care of it, you're no longer ineligible to apply for an SBA-backed loan. Look, we're a country of second chances. And we believe that once this is fully implemented, this will give an opportunity to literally thousands, if not millions of people in the country to build a stake in society, to start a small business, and to get the small loan to build your dignity and opportunity for yourself and your family. So again, these are some of the examples to give you a sense of how much focus there has been on equity to make sure that funding is reaching those who are at the margins of our society. Before I finish, let me talk about disaster very briefly, since climate is one of the areas of focus here. You heard from Tom earlier as well. SBA, along with FEMA, is also a disaster response agency. And this region, especially with the hurricane and tropical storm Francine you've seen, is no stranger to natural disasters. We have been making sure that our disaster response programs have a resilience component to it. So there are a couple of examples to share with you how we've tried to make them more wholesome, have resilience a part of it. So if you get a loan, if you're a business that's impacted by natural disaster and you get a business loan which is up to $2.2 million, you could use some of the proceeds to upgrade your equipment to be more energy efficient. Or if you want to raise your HVAC so that it doesn't flood next time, you can use some of the proceeds from those monies to do that. And an example that I think reflects again our focus on resilience and sustainability. So with that, let me do a close. I just want to say overall how inspiring it is to come here and follow in the footsteps of a great leader, and how this community is coming together. That's how change is made. You've obviously heard me talk about various programs at the federal level, but we want to make sure they're reaching this community. So it's a great forum. We hope to be able to support you all in the coming years. So thank you again for having me, and look forward to your questions.